Good evening. I want to call this meeting of the Durham City Council to order on February 4th, 2019. And we certainly want to welcome everyone here tonight. We're very, very glad to have you. And could I first ask you to please join me in a moment of silent meditation? So first we're going to have the presentation of the proclamation for Together for Resilient Youth, Try Prevention Month. And I believe Mr. Earl Boone is here to receive the proclamation. Good to see you, Mr. Boone. And I certainly like your bow tie. Good. Come on up. Whereas prevention of mental health and substance use disorders treatment is effective, and people recover in our area and around the nation. And whereas preventing substance use is essential to achieving healthy lifestyles, both physically and emotionally. And whereas we must encourage youth, parents, adults, relatives, and friends to participate in preventive measures, recognize the signs of substance use problem, use of naloxone, and guide those in need to appropriate resources and support services. And whereas, according to the 2017 Durham County Youth Risk Behavior Survey, in the last 30 days before responding to the survey, high school students reported 10% cigarette use, 14% vape tobacco use, 21% alcohol use, 22% marijuana use, and 13% prescription medication use. Risky behaviors such as suicide indicate 16% of high school students reported that they considered this during the 12 months. And whereas to promote resilience and increase environmental strategies, we invite all residents of Durham to participate with Together for Resilient Youth in preventing substance use, the impact of adverse childhood experience, other negative outcomes associated with substance use, including violence, crime, suicide, poor health, and overdose, and providing support to parents who have lost children due to overdose. Now, therefore, I, Stephen M. Schul, Mayor of the City of Durham, North Carolina, do hereby proclaim the month of February 2019 as Together for Resilient Youth Try Prevention Month in Durham, and call upon the people of Durham to observe this month with appropriate programs and activities throughout the community. Witness my hand in the corporate seal of the City of Durham, North Carolina, this, the 4th day of February 2019. And Mr. Boone, I'm now going to give you this proclamation and ask you if you have a moment or two for comment.
All righty. I just do happen to have a couple of comments. Are there any members of Try or Resilient Together here with us tonight? If so, please come forward. Thank you, Minnie. Okay, to Mayor Steve Schul and the City Council members and staff, on behalf of Wanda and the Together for Resilient Youth family, some of whom are present with us tonight, I thank you so much for this proclamation and receive it with gladness. First, I'd like to give a shout out to the late Councilman Howard Clement, who was the first one to catch Try's prevention vision. He was an early champion and encourager. Now, although the statistics mentioned in the proclamation are difficult to hear, we have seen decreases in every area other than marijuana use, which has stayed the same. More about that in a moment. Try is a coalition with sector stakeholders that make a difference. LIFT, Living in Future Tense, consists of 9 to 17-year-olds. College Try, 18 to 24-year-olds. Businesses, over 450 alcohol retailers. Faith community, law enforcement, community through the PAC system, the health industry, and parents as well. These individuals help to form our strategic action plan. Wanda is currently in DC receiving an award for outcomes. Research shows that the more alcohol outlets in a given geographic area, the more crime and negative outcomes you see. These outlets are usually concentrated in low-resource communities. Rather than trying to shut businesses down, TRI encourages these businesses as partners, thus the Good Neighbor Business Network. TRI helped to reduce the impact of alcohol outlet density by improving the compliance rates among the businesses. That is, that they would follow the law, they would check IDs, that they would not sell to minors, that they would not serve to intoxicated patrons, and that they would curb loitering, et cetera, in and near their areas. Trial results are used by the Centers for Disease Control, the CDC, as a recognized practice. A decrease in underage drinking and an increase in alcohol outlet retail density compliance have helped lead to a general decrease in crime. And finally, marijuana and the developing brain. The adolescent brain doesn't fully develop until around 25 years of age. The Colorado Department of Public Health has issued a warning about the use of marijuana by adolescents and young adults. When young people use marijuana, one joint or part of a joint, or a whatever term you want to use to describe it, 1 to 4 times a week, it could lead to bipolar and schizophrenia later in life. So to coin a phrase, an ounce of prevention is worth a kilo of cure. So thank you very much for this proclamation, and we look forward to working diligently with the county, the city, and whoever else will come to the table to reduce substance use among young people. Thank you very much. Anything?
Or you can't take that second one, that belongs to somebody else. All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, and now I'm going to welcome Councilmember Charlie Reese to the podium to issue our second proclamation tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate that. I appreciate this opportunity to proclaim January 30th, Fred Korematsu Day of Civil Liberties and the Constitution here in Durham. Somewhat belatedly due to our meeting schedule, but better late than never. I also want to thank Dr. Chioko Lord, member of the board of the Japan America Society of North Carolina, for being here tonight to accept this proclamation and to say a few words afterwards. But before I read the proclamation, I'd like to take this opportunity to speak for a bit about why this is so important in our city's life right now. Because as it was last year and the year before, this is still an especially appropriate time in our nation's history and our political life to honor the life of Fred Korematsu. Excuse me, 77 years ago this month, during a time of geopolitical uncertainty abroad and nationalist paranoia here at home, the President of the United States signed an executive order that required the forcible separation of people based on their nationality and the nationality of their families. Even American citizens like Fred Korematsu were caught up in the sweep of this illegal and unconstitutional executive order, an order that was sold to the American people by our government as necessary to protect our national security. Eventually, a federal judge found that executive order to have been unlawful, and it's come to be known as one of the darkest periods in our nation's modern history. Perhaps you're like me, and you see the disturbing historical parallels between that executive order during World War II and what's happening in our country today. This proclamation is also important in the life of our city. In recent years, Durham has opened our hearts and our neighborhoods to thousands of refugees and immigrants. Nothing exemplifies our city's values more than our eagerness and happiness to welcome these new Durham residents into our gracious and loving city. And finally, this proclamation is important to me on a very personal level. My grandmother was just 3 months old my mother was just 3 months old when she and my grandmother immigrated to the United States from Japan. And as the son and grandson of Japanese immigrants, today's proclamation is especially personal to me, as is the courage exemplified by its honoree, Fred Korematsu. So again, Mr. Mayor, thank you for giving me this opportunity in this pivotal moment in our history to proclaim January 30th, Fred Korematsu Day. I'll go ahead and read the proclamation, and afterwards, Dr. Lord will come up and say a few words. Whereas Fred Korematsu, the son of Japanese immigrants, was born on January 30th, 1919 in Oakland, California. And whereas on December 7th, 1941, Japan attacked the American military base at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, propelling the United States into World War II. And whereas during World War II, Mr. Korematsu refused to comply with Federal Executive Order 9066, signed by U.S. President Franklin D. Roosevelt on February 19, 1942, which authorized, on the basis of supposed wartime military necessity, the relocation and internment of 117,000 people of Japanese descent, two-thirds of whom were native-born American citizens. And whereas after being jailed in California and subsequently sent to the Topaz War Relocation Center in Utah, Mr. Korematsu unsuccessfully challenged the relocation order in the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit and the U.S. Supreme Court. And whereas President Ronald Reagan signed the Civil Liberties Act of 1988, issuing an apology and payment of compensations to individuals of Japanese descent who were interned during World War II. And on January 15, 1998, President Bill Clinton awarded Mr. Korematsu the Presidential Medal of Freedom, America's highest civilian honor. And whereas until his death in 2005, Fred Korematsu remained a tireless advocate for the constitutional rights of Americans to liberty, due process, and equality without regard to race, religion, ethnicity, or national origin. Therefore, I, Stephen M. Schewel, Mayor of the City of Durham, North Carolina, do hereby proclaim January 30th, 2019 as Fred Korematsu Day of Civil Liberties and the Constitution here in Durham, and hereby urge all residents of the City of Durham to contemplate the life of Fred Korematsu and the critical importance of preserving civil liberties, even in times of real or perceived crisis, and to take special note of this observance. Witness my hand in the corporate seal of the City of Durham, North Carolina, this 30th day of January, 2019. Now, Dr. Chiyoko Lord of the Japan America Society of North Carolina will accept the proclamation and then say a few words.
Thank you for your introduction, Shelley. My name is Chiyoko Lord. We are honored to be invited to Durham to celebrate the Fred Korematsu Day of Civil Liberties and Constitution. I was born and raised in Japan and immigrated to this country 3 decades ago. I have been a U.S. citizen for many years now, and since I moved to North Carolina, I met quite a few Japanese Americans who are personally connected to the Japanese-American internment during the World War II. Listening to stories from people whose families went through unthinkable experience, I always feel that I should know more. Proclamation of the Fred Korematsu Day is a large step to such a reminder. I would like to believe that this country is so much more than what is going on now, because we have a history of rectifying past wrongs. Fred Korematsu fought for the right of Japanese American. He eventually succeeded, even though it took 40 years. His achievements were recognized by being awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom by President Clinton, Charlie mentioned. In addition, he was also the first Asian American to have a day recognized in his name by the state of California, and now many other states and cities, including the states of Virginia and South Carolina. We hope North Carolina will become one of those states in the future. Let us hope that the progress achieved in the civil rights in our country will continue based on the efforts and sacrifices made by people like Fred Korematsu. Mr. Reese, Mr. Mayor, and members of the city, Durham City Council, thank you for inviting me to celebrate the Fred Korematsu Day on behalf of the Japan American Society of North Carolina. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you so much. And now I will ask if there are any announcements by members of the council. Any announcements by members of the council? Councilmember Middleton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening to all of you, Bull City, and to my colleagues. It was quite a busy weekend in Durham, Mr. Mayor, and I want to congratulate my colleagues who took the stage on Saturday night at Pinhook to benefit programs of the LGBTQ Center here in Durham. I understand it was quite a rousing number of performances. I don't think there'll be any images that will cause people to call for resignations. I can't speak to blackmail, however. So I want to congratulate them. I also want to, while I'm talking about my colleagues, I want to shout out my distinguished colleague, Javier Caballero. If any of you haven't seen Durham Magazine, the latest issue of Durham Magazine, there's a story in there on the influencers, those that are shaping the future of Durham, and Councilor Javier Caballero is one of the influencers shaping Durham's future. So I told people I know her. Very proud to be her seatmate up here. So if you haven't seen Durham Magazine, please get it. Mr. Mayor, we were spread out over the city over the weekend. While you guys were handling your business at Pinhook, I was very pleased to represent the council to kick off Black History Month with members of the Greater Durham Black Chamber of Commerce, who held their annual event on Saturday night, where we honored two giants in our city, Dr. Elaine Hart Brothers and R. Edward Stewart of UDI. So I was very pleased to be there. I want to congratulate the Chamber and certainly wish all of our residents and citizens here in Durham a happy Black History Month. And finally, I want to thank the manager, the city manager, for arranging what I thought was an informative presentation for us last week of ShotSpotter technology. A number of you have know that we've been talking about this here in Durham. We know that gun violence is an issue for America, and that Durham is not in any way sequestered from the rest of America, and that as America goes, Durham goes in many ways. No decisions have been made, but I want to just let residents and citizens know who are talking about this issue constantly that we on the council take this issue as seriously as we do tire mulch or barrier-protected bike lanes or trees. We take this issue very seriously. We know what we cannot do in terms of gun violence. We've heard the litany of things we can't do because of federal and state strictures. But I'm proud that this council is having conversations about things that we can do. And I look forward to further conversation, further study. No decisions have been made, but I look forward to further consideration with an eye towards making a determination if this is a tool we should consider, even if it's on an experimental basis. So I want to thank the city manager for arranging that for us, the staff, and I look forward to a robust discussion. And we hear you out there, and we take this issue very seriously. And as Durham does, we're going to come up with Durham tailored responses for a Durham situation, although it's a national problem. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Council Member. Any other announcements? Councilmember Reese.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Speaking of influencers, I know it's our practice to recognize other elected officials and former elected officials when they come and visit us. And I see Jackie Wagstaff is a former member of this body, and I thank you for being here, Ms. Wagstaff. It's good to see you again. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. All right, any other announcements? Councilmember Caballero.
It's a busy night. I just wanted to let folks know in January there was I made a statement about holding a public forum around public safety, and that forum has been confirmed for Sunday, February 24th at Immaculada at 3 p.m. following the last service of the day there. I will also be making another announcement in a few weeks, and that you will see build up to that event, and I hope folks join us for that day. Thank you.
And I think just to be clear, do you want to explain just a little bit more about
Sure.
the event? It's
So
not
we
just
know
a
that
public
there's-
safety event.
Yeah, it's a public safety event. Chief Davis will be there. Our hopes is that also our District Attorney Satana DeBerry and our Sheriff Clarence Burkhead will also attend. It's a moment for folks, many in the immigrant Latino community who felt very fearful around some of the spikes we've seen in crime targeting that community, to have an opportunity to come get some updates and also share some of their experiences.
Thank you very much. Any further announcements? All right. Thank you very much, council members. And now I'm going to ask if there are any priority items by the city manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, everyone. There are no priority items this evening from the city manager's office.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Madam Attorney?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, everyone. Kim Rayberg from the City Attorney's Office, and we have no priority items this evening.
Thank you and welcome, Kim. We're glad to have you. And Madam Clerk?
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. I have no items.
All right, thank you very much. We will now turn to the consent agenda. The consent agenda can be approved by a single vote by members of the council. Items can be removed by the consent agenda by members of the public or members of the council, and if they are so removed, will be considered at the end of the meeting. And I will now read the consent agenda. Item 1, approval of City Council minutes. Item 3, December 2018 bid report. Item 4, second renewal of right-of-way maintenance and mowing contract, renewal of 3-year period. Item 6, building inspections, land development office software web portal upgrade. Item 7, Environmental Systems Research Institute software maintenance service agreement. You have heard the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda. I'm sorry, Madam Clerk, will you please open the vote? Please close the vote.
The motion passes 7-0.
Thank you very much. There being no more business to come before this body, we are adjourned at 7:23. Thank you all for being here tonight.